What's up, guys? It's Kayla here. Let's read. Welcome back to our channel. Before we get started, click that subscribe button, turn on all notifications, and give me a huge thumbs up. So, today what we're going to be reading is our last chapter of Princess Katie's Kittens, Pixie at the Palace. It's going to be chapter 7. And the title today is called A Long Night. Okay. Here we go. They'd been searching for a long time and there was no sign of Pixie anywhere. Now Mr. Parks was saying that in 5 minutes they'd have to go home. "I don't think your kitten is here," he said. "It's probably curled up in someone's home, fast asleep after a big dinner." He acted kindly, but Katie had a feeling that Pixie wasn't safe. She walked more slowly, shining up her flashlight down in the bushes, then up into the trees, calling, "Pixie!" There was no answer. Too soon, Mr. Parks checked his watch. "That's it. Sorry, girls, but it's time to go back." He turned around, but Sam ignored his masters to call to heel. Nose pressed to the ground, he followed a scent. Katie swung her flashlight around. Though the trees, she could just make out the parking lot she'd been to earlier. With Miss Blaze, there were lots of animals in the woods, and Sam spent a happy evening tracking them. But this scent seemed to excite him more than any of the others. Wagging his tail, Sam left the path to nose around the undergrowth. Katie held her breath. What had Sam found when Sam gave a surprise woof? Katie dived after him. Reaching down, she scooped up a tiny bed raggled, bundled, and hugged it closer to her chest. "Pixie," she whispered, "thank goodness we found you." Pixie pressed his tiny body close to Katie's. His silver gray fur was freezing cold, and he was trembling with fright. Katie unzipped her fleece, popped the kitten inside, then carefully zipped it up to his chin. "You found him!" Becky leaned forward, and Katie shifted so her friend could pet the top of Pixie's head. "Poor little thing, he looks so cold." "He's shivering," Katie whispered. "I hope he'll be all right." It was a slow walk back. Pixie was so still that Katie kept stopping to check he was breathing. "We might have to call the vet," she said worriedly. "A drop of warm milk will bring him around," said Mr. Parks. "I'll lend you a bottle in case he can't manage to drink on his own. My wife and I hand-raised 3 baby hedgehogs last year, so we've got all the stuff you'll need." Pulling out a cell phone, Mr. Parks called his wife and also Katie's parents. Mrs. Parks met them in the palace gardens with a bag full of useful things, including bottles and a small pet bed, which Becky took and carried up to the palace. They entered through the kitchens where Katie's mom was warming milk in a saucepan. Even though Katie was worried about Pixie, she caught Becky's eye and managed a smile. It was strange to see the queen cooking. Becky took off her coat, but Katie kept hers on, leaving Pixie tucked inside as she continued to warm him up. The milk's ready, said the queen, testing it with her knuckle, then half filling the bottle. Becky passed her. Sit down, sweetie, she said, pulling out a chair from the huge kitchen table. Katie sat down and held Pixie in her lap. The little kitten barely moved. Please let him be all right, she thought as she offered him the bottle treat. Pixie was too weak to take it, so Katie nudged his mouth open gently and slipped the teat inside. The milk dribbled down the sides of his mouth. Here, said Becky, handing Katie a paper towel. Katie wiped away the spilled milk and tried again. Pixie coughed and spluttered. Come on, little Pixie, whispered Katie. Don't give up, please. You can do it. Becky added softly. Weakly, Pixie stared back at the girls and closed his eyes. Katie nearly cried with a desperate, please wake up, Pixie, she muttered. Pixie blinked, then slowly began to suck. He stopped after a few sips. Katie was very excited. Good job, good job, you tough little kitten, she said with tears in her eyes. He's a fighter, said Mr. Parks. With some special care, he'll pull through. If I were you, I'd feed him every 2 hours tonight. That'll get his strength up. I can take him home and do it if it's too much for you. No, thank you, said Katie quickly. I can do it. Can I do it? Can't I, Mom? I don't have school tomorrow. The Queen smiled. You won't sleep if I say no, so I suppose that's a yes. Thanks, Mom. Katie smiled back gratefully. At first, Katie couldn't bear to put Pixie down. She'd lost him once, and she didn't intend to lose him a second time. She cradled him on her lap, willing him to get better. But as the kitten began to feel warmer, Katie was persuaded to leave him in the bed supplied by Mrs. Parks while she ran up to her room to change into her pajamas. Mrs. Phillips, Becky's mom, had agreed that Becky could stay the night with Katie. Mrs. Phillips and the Queen made a camp for the girls in a room near the kitchen with bean bags and blankets. They moved Pixie's bed next to it. Katie set the alarm on her watch for midnight. The next time Pixie needed to be fed before she and Becky settled down to sleep. They snuck down the hall to the mudroom together. Quietly pushing open the door, the girls peered inside. The other 5 kittens were crammed in their bed, fast asleep. "They're so sweet," Katie said softly. "They'll have a nice surprise tomorrow when they see Pixie." Becky whispered back. "Yes," said Katie, crossing her fingers because Pixie was still very weak. At first, Katie and Becky lay on their bean bags, talking quietly so they didn't disturb Pixie. Every now and then, Katie checked that the kitten was all right. His tiny body was so fragile and his heart fluttered like bird's wings. Gradually, Katie's eyes became too heavy to keep open. Nestling into her beanbag, she pulled the blankets up to her nose and finally fell asleep. Katie could hardly believe it when the alarm on her watch buzzed. She just closed her eyes. Sleepily, she got up. Pixie was still asleep, but Becky had woken up, too. Stifling yawns, the girls creeped along to the kitchen to fetch the fresh milk. Pixie was still sleeping when they got back, but when Katie leaned over to his bed, the kitten woke up. Katie was about to lift him when she noticed Becky watching her longingly. She tasted, then asked, "Would you like to feed him?" "Me?" Becky smiled excitedly. "But Pixie's your kitten." "I don't mind," said Katie. Even though she did mind, you do this feeding, and I'll do the next one. Sit down and I'll hand him to you. Becky was very patient with Pixie, but he hardly drank any of the milk. "He's still so weak," said Katie, her face creasing with worry. "At least he's warm now," answered Becky as she carefully put the kitten back in his bed. Katie didn't sleep at all after that. She rested her hand on Pixie's soft fur as she watched him sleep every now and then. The kitten's paws twitched as if he was having a bad dream. The minutes creeped by slowly. Katie wished the time would hurry so that she could try feeding Pixie again. He had to get strength back. At 1:45, she switched off the alarm on her watch and got up. It was no good. She couldn't wait any longer. She woke up Becky and they tiptoed to the kitchen for milk. When Katie scooped Pixie out of his bed, he stared right at her, smiling back at him. Katie patted his face. The kitten watched her with solemn eyes. Then suddenly he licked her hand. Katie's heart leaped. Pixie was getting better. As if he agreed with her, Pixie latched onto the bottle, and after a few distant sips, he drank with enjoyment. "Aw, that's so sweet," sighed Becky. The girls shared a smile. When Pixie finished drinking, Princess Katie hugged him. "Hello, Pixie," she whispered. "Welcome to Starlight Palace, your new home." After 2 more feedings, Pixie was almost back to his normal, adventurous self. "Let's take him to see his brother and sisters," said Katie, yawning sleepily. She lifted Pixie up and snuggled into her Lilith's robe. Quietly, the girls walked to the mudroom. Becky pushed the door open. "Aw, they're still asleep," she said. Katie put Pixie down. At first, he was a bit wobbly, but after a few seconds, he sniffed the basket full of kittens. He stepped forward silently and suddenly pounced, landing in the basket on top of everyone. The kittens scrambled up, squeaking and meowing with surprise. Katie and Becky couldn't stop laughing. "Look, they're play fighting." Katie giggled as the orange kitten tugged at Pixie's tail. Becky sighed happily. "Having kittens is going to be so much fun." "It's going to be wonderful," agreed Princess Katie, giving her friend a hug. "I can't wait to see what they'll do next." Well, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure to give us a huge thumbs up. Click that subscribe button, turn on all notifications. See you guys next time. Bye. We finished the book, finally.